Hope you are enjoying the event. And sorry for the delay. We were just having an alumni story session before this. So I would like to I would like to apologize to all the attendees for this delay. But let's start now. We have all the panel members over here. And just to introduce myself, my name is Apurv. I am part of the B2K8 batch of IIIT Allahabad, and I'm currently working as a senior product manager at Microsoft Ireland. I'm part of the core organizing committee of this event, and I'll be moderating this session. And today on the panel, we have 4 of our alumni who have established their name in the field of entrepreneurship, not only in India, but abroad. So we have with us Shilpi Gupta ma'am, who is from the B2K3 batch. She is currently based out of Seattle, and she is the founder of a company called Is. Prior to that, she also founded a company called Cookery, and she has spent almost close to a decade at Amazon, serving as a software development manager over there. Next, we have on the panel is Samir Menon sir, again from B2K3 batch. He did his PhD after graduating from IIIT Allahabad from the prestigious Stanford University. And he's currently founder of Dexterity, and he's into robotics. We have Hemant Verma sir, who is part of B2K6 batch. He is an Amazonian expert, so very similar to my background in terms of company, but then he worked in a number of startups, and currently he's co-founder and CTO of Goodly, which is for tax-free loans, and this is a Y Combinator based backed startup. So welcome, sir. And last but not the least, we have Soumya Bhattacharya sir. Some of you may have heard him during the alumni story talk, and he is the CFO and Chief Data Officer of SUS Labs, based out of Mumbai, and he's solving energy problems currently in his company. So welcome all the esteemed panelists to this session. So a bit of structure that we would like to follow. First of all, Medha and Mayank, first of all, thank you for that. Thank you for all your help. And they are the volunteers. They are the student volunteers. And Medha will be our timekeeper. So we'll give each panel member 5 to 7 minutes to talk about their entrepreneurial journey. Basically, we would like to know what motivated them to start their own venture, and what is the real purpose of their business. What is the impact they're trying to generate? Once the general talk by each of the panelists is over, we will open the floor for questions. I have received a number of questions from our registered participants. So we'll start off with those questions. And what I've done is that I've classified all these different questions into different themes. So we'll start off with those questions first. And then we'll also use this chat group for answering any questions that our attendees may have. For the attendees, please post your question on the chat group. And if you have pointed question for a particular panelist, please do mention their names. So with that, I would like to hand it over to Shilpi Gupta ma'am first to share the work that she is doing in Is, and also her motivation for leaving Amazon and starting her own business in the food sector. And currently with Is, I know that she is into food tech. So ma'am, please enlighten us with your experience, and also tell us about your purpose. Thank you.
Sounds good. Thanks, Apurv. Am I audible? Just to make sure that people can hear me fine. Okay, sounds good. And yeah, super excited to be speaking to IIITians current and past alumni as well, and love to tell my journey. So just getting started. I thought hearing my voice might be a little too boring, so I have some things that you can see as well. So let me quickly share as well. Are you guys able to see my screen?
Yes, we can see your screen, ma'am.
Okay, perfect. Quick introduction, Apurva already mentioned, but stating again. So my name is Shilpi, and I'm the founder and CEO of Eddie7. We provide personalized hiring services to restaurants. We'll go into more details later. But from a triple IT perspective, I'm from patch of 2003 to 2007. While very few people might know that I had a senior batch which is 6 months elder to us. That's why you would hear even some women to me from 2003, but they were actually our seniors. Having said that, I will walk you through a picture, and I'm hoping that maybe some people might be able to relate to it. So, what do you think this picture is? What occasion this might be? Any vague ideas?
Effervescence.
I wish it was effervescence, but no, it's not. It's actually our farewell night, last day in college, right before we enter into our corporate world. And as silly we may look, but pretty much I would say anybody who's into pleasure right now, please do enjoy your time. We miss it a lot, and right after there, your career is about to change. So did for me. After I left IIIT, I worked for a startup for a little bit, but eventually entered Amazon, and I was kind of there for almost a decade. Life at Amazon was interesting. Joined as a junior engineer, learned a lot, got a lot of promotions. It wasn't all just work. There was team outings. You will have like birthday celebrations, a lot of speaking engagements, fancy campus. I mean, you can see the spheres now. It's like, it looks beautiful if you ever come down to Seattle. Nice, flashy offices. And for the most part of my time at Amazon, I was actually with Prime Video. I'm not sure if you guys have seen the experience, but if you've seen the Prime Video experience and you see the home screen, pretty much whatever comes on the home screen, like top TV shows, your recommended movies, that used to be my team. And I joined that space very early on, and eventually was leading that space by the time I was leaving. So growth-wise, perfect. Learning-wise, amazing. Had fun, great. But I would say that somewhere down the line, after 7 to 8 years of working in that space, I was somewhat like this. Bored to death, not looking forward to next year, didn't have anything more to prove. I could have got another promotion, gone into senior management, whatever, maybe a director by now. But if I remember my time when I was about to leave, my feeling was I had nothing more to look forward to. Like, there was nothing more for me to prove. And I think that was my pivot point where I knew that I had to leave. There's nothing more fulfilling me right now from my corporate kind of Amazon, Microsoft, those fan kind of lifestyle. And with that in mind, I was said that I'll leave. But I didn't know what. Like, yeah, you want to leave, you want to do something, but exactly what? What are you going to do? And there's one thing that I knew about myself, that outside of tech, the one space, the one industry that used to kind of like drive me crazy, I'm passionate about, is basically food. I'm a diehard food lover. Pick any cuisine, and I will tell you 5 things that I like from that cuisine. And my thought was, can I use my learnings of working in a corporate life at Amazon, running teams, into a space I knew nothing about, and can I actually build something that people care about in that space? And that was my motivation to leave. Amazon is like, joining another tech company would be easy. Starting a tech startup, comparatively easy, but starting a business into a sector which you had zero clue of was damn challenging in my head. And I was like, okay, I'm ready to take on that challenge. So with that in mind, I left Amazon. Believe it or not, I worked in a couple of restaurants as a cook as well for some time, like literally behind the scene cooking food for you. And over time, I spent like, I would say about like 6 to 8 months streamlining what I really wanted to do in the food industry. And I found a gap that there wasn't a high quality food for the lunch crowd, which was healthy but nutritious as well as flavorful. And I thought I could bring that and scale that as well. So partnered with a Michelin star chef from New York, launched a food business. I would say launched this. We launched a food truck. It was fun. It was exciting, and something that I've never kind of imagined. And I would even say I underestimated what a food business entails and like what the life would be. So giving you a quick glimpse into my life in the food truck world. So think of anything that may happen on a food truck, and I might have done that. I drove the truck. I hate driving, but I was driving a 22 footer. I washed dishes more than whatever I would have washed in my whole life. I was a cashier. I did cooking. There were fun moments. People will be dancing in the truck. There'll be customers who will be like joining you in the fun, lively environment of a food industry. But even though it sounds that there are elements of it which was hard. I was even a mechanic for some days. Like truck broke down and I'm in the middle of the street trying to fix it. Not easy, but I would say one thing, that while all the challenges kept felt hard and I would say like kind of frightening at some point, there was one thing that kept us going, and that was customers. Like the fact that when you see a line of 25 people standing in front of you, waiting in the sun, trying to get your food, there is nothing more satisfying or gratifying than that moment. And people raving about your food. I mean, forget media attention. We got tons of that. And I would say, like, ignore that. If there's one takeaway that I want to take you guys from as an entrepreneur is forget media, forget investors, focus on your customers, focus on what they are telling you, focus on what feedback they have, what is something that they're not like, and you'll probably do a much better job at running your business correctly. So that kept us motivated and kept us going. We were charged. We wanted to like launch new stores. But I have this principle, and at the end of every year, I have this whole method of looking back into the year and trying to see that did I actually go where I wanted to in that whole 1 year? And when I was revisiting the whole life of my cookery business, the food truck, what I realized is while it was doing really well and customers loved it, and I had investor lined up who was ready to fund it to start locations and like open up multiple locations. But there was something that was not right about the food industry, which I wasn't in agreement with. It doesn't scale as fast. And what I mean is, in a tech industry, when you build a piece of software, you get initial traction, you have a bunch of customers, you start putting servers, and you can start scaling horizontally and add more features, get more customers. But in the food industry, from going from one location to a second location, you're looking at anywhere between 5 to 12 months based on your permits, your licensing, your location that you have to finalize, the construction that you have to do. And that was too slow in my head. I was like, I don't like that pace. I don't like to wait for every store I have to wait 1 year. That's not what I'm looking at. And that's where I kind of knew that it doesn't align 100% with what I went out to do, which is create a food brand which people like and can scale. The second part was not meeting, and I knew I had to pivot. And the other key guidance that I can give you is you got to be analyzing your business every once in a while, and you should know when to pivot. And I think I knew when to pivot, and that was my pivot point. But your career as an entrepreneur, or even just working in any company, you will have many twists and turns. But at every turn, you probably are going to learn something new. It is for you to watch out for those learnings. And what I learned in my food truck business was hiring and retention in this industry was nuts. Like we thought that hiring people in the tech industry is hard, where the attrition rate is like probably 20, 30, maybe 35%. Come to restaurant industry, the attrition is 75%. Like every 2, 3 months, somebody leaves. And there aren't enough tools, there aren't enough platforms to help with the industry with that. And that's where I was like, this is it. I get a space that I'm interested about. I use my former knowledge as a person from technology to join that to solve something for the space that I care so much about. And that's what kind of gave birth to my current venture, which is called Letter 7. And basically, we're like, if we can make a dent into this attrition numbers, that will be a huge success for me as a person to prove myself that, yes, I made a difference in the industry. We launched last year, 2020. It hasn't been long, so it's a story still to be written, and I'll be happy to like share more as I learn more about how we are going through it. But for now, that's my story. Happy to answer questions, and you can reach me on LinkedIn as well as my email. It's my first name at @edseven.com. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, ma'am, and thanks for all the insights. I think you mentioned an interesting thing around customers, and I believe like most of the customer obsession was coming from Amazon that you learned over years, right?
True. I think the 14 guiding principle. I think it's now 13. The guiding principle of Amazon definitely is a good way to judge what you should focus on. And a lot of people say that Amazon life is a lot of startup life, and I kind of agree with that. It does train you to be a startup life, to actually run a business of your own. And yeah, I mean, if there are people, and I'm sure there are policies like that for other companies, but yeah, like guiding principles, you need them, and I think Amazon taught that.
That's great, ma'am. One more question that is coming from the chat is like around food business licenses. If you want to get into food business, so can you share some insights on that?
Yeah, so I was running the food business in Seattle, so I can definitely talk about US. I'm sure it's sort of similar in every area, different departments, but you have this whole concept of you need to get a license to run a business at a certain location, which is kind of like this location can operate as a food business. You need a permit to actually run the food, which is like here is the kind of food I'm gonna run, and that gets inspected every few months. And so those are the two kind of license. There's like if it's a location, then you have like signage license, like where can you put your restaurant name? You can't just put it anywhere. If you are kind of a truck, you can't just park your truck anywhere. You need to get this license of the spot where you're going to park the truck. So typically you have a location specific license and a food specific license. Those are the top two ones that you have.
Fantastic. That's great, ma'am. Thank you for the wonderful talk and all the insights. And with that, I would now like to invite Sameer Menon, sir, from B2K3 batch, founder of Dexterity.
Sounds good. Let me stop sharing as well.
Ma'am, some people also want to know if you joined Amazon Seattle right after college, and what were the cuisines which you were serving. So please do answer those questions on the chat while we hear the story from Sameer Menon, sir.
Sounds good. Perfect. I'll answer that in chat. I'm just trying to see if I can stop sharing somehow. It's not showing me. Okay. Okay.
Sameer, sir, are you there with us? We can see you. Mayank, can you please help Sameer, sir? He's not able to unmute himself. Have you made him co-host?
Great. Yeah. How's it going, guys? Sorry.
So welcome.
Chuck, just give me a second. Awesome. Looks like we are good to go. Well, great. Thanks, everyone, for being here. It's a pleasure to have an opportunity to come and talk. Entrepreneurship is quite an interesting experience, and I'd be happy to share my 2 cents here. So let me maybe just also pull up a quick short presentation. And there we go. So I'm gonna talk a little bit about our journey with Dexterity. So what is Dexterity? Dexterity is a startup focused on developing intelligent robot software that basically we can combine with just about any random robot and allow those robots to get smart and automate all sorts of complex, repetitive tasks. Now, I've never been a big fan of repetitive work. I love novelty. And so, when we look at people, then we find our lives are filled with all sorts of random things that, we have to do over and over and over again, whether that means clean your bed or clean behind the mess that your kids left, or um, just fold your clothes, da, 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 da. And so I think for me, robotics is a pretty personal interest. Is I kind of want to get rid of repetition from human civilization. It sounds like a crazy goal, but maybe we'll at least make most of the tedious repetitive tasks optional. So what are we how did we start? Well, when we started, we actually started with the core idea that they were, it was basically infeasible for us to continue to rely on human labor to do tasks, that people just didn't want to do anymore. And now, I think my view into startups is you should always start with a very clear problem that is proven, in the market. And so when we looked out at the news, and by the way, this news has been ongoing for like 5 years now. What we find is there's a labor shortage in at least the developed world. No matter how many people you try to hire, there's just a labor shortage. There's a big labor shortage. And I think the most critical part really is, and this is something that I think we probably experience in India as well, is that the people who are actually doing a lot of these manual labor type of jobs, they might want to do it, but they don't want their kids to do it. And so whether this be, folks who are helping, in our houses, or folks who are working in shops, pretty much everyone wants to have a brighter future. And on the back of that, we felt that if we can, those jobs still need to be done. If they can be done with automation, it allows society to progress. So for us, it was a pretty pertinent goal. I think it is a very good, and it leads us through some form of transition in society. But fortunately, right now the job shortage is so severe in most parts of the world that, or the worker shortage is so severe in most parts of the world that I think there's a very constructive path for robots to make it out into society. And when we are looking at a startup, I think there's a few things. You start off with an idea, which is what I presented on the first slide, which is to make repetition optional using intelligent automation. You start off with then you move to a problem. This problem is pretty real. It's a very massive problem. It's like a $1 trillion problem. And if you have an interesting idea and set of skills, a very massive problem, you can always start to make progress. Right? So next you need to think about what's the path to start making progress on the problem. And the path to start making progress on the problem is to constrain the problem to maybe what you would call a starting point. For us, that starting point was transportation and warehousing. What we can do in transportation and warehousing is help control pretty rapidly rising costs and a very massive labor shortage. And so there's been almost in the US 300,000 unfilled jobs averaged over the past few years. And this was pre-corona, and corona hit logistics really, really hard. And there's 60% attrition in this industry, which means you hire 100 people, by the end of the year, 60 of them have quit. I mean, that is nuts. Like, just totally nuts. Like, imagine, pretty much 5% of your workforce is leaving each month. How can you even manage your operations like that? And these companies have to do it. And logistics is a very critical sort of industry which needs to function. So on top of that, there's this massive growth in logistics. You all want to order our stuff online. Fewer and fewer people are going to stores. And so there's cool idea, cool mission, solid problem. The problem is getting worse, which means there's a huge amount of push to get us to solve that problem. And then that's where the tool comes in, and we can basically add robots. They keep on delivering better and better value, and that's fantastic. And so typically what we find is, so again, within the space of startups, great idea, interesting mission. We have a very massive market. There's a small section of that market where there's a clear sort of path to adoption, to identifying a set of customers. We come to customers. The messaging to the customers needs to be very clear, and you want to start with what are called pain points for customers. Pain points are things that are pressing needs. Like it's in startup lingo, there's oftentimes this conversation about pain point versus vitamin, and you don't want to be selling vitamins, right? Because vitamins will have an impact over the next 10 years in your life and make you healthy and all that, but nobody really will want to buy them ASAP, and it's very, very tough. Pain points, people buy painkillers immediately. Like you have a stomach ache, you want to do something about it right now. So with startups, that I want to do something right now is very, very critical, right? And it shouldn't just be I want to do a small thing right now. So I want to do a lot of things, like really big things right now. And so with customers, they need to put sort of stock items out in the hands of consumers. The costs are spiraling out of control. They just can't find people to do the job, and supply chains are extremely unpredictable. If you actually go out, this is where you start looking at macro trends, start doing customer research. You identify a set of customers, and I'll give you one instance. If you take a very massive company like, say, Walmart, their profit margin is actually like very slim, even though they do hundreds of billions of dollars of revenue. And if the costs increase even marginally, it actually has a very deep and dramatic impact on their profitability. So making things predictable lowers costs, and it allows you to plan. The more you can plan, the better you can operate, the more efficiency you have. So our job there is to costs, take a lot of the repetitive jobs that people don't want to do and give them to robots. And that way you can actually take your labor force and allocate it to a higher value work. You can pay them more and be happy about paying them more. That's how capitalism works. And I think it's honestly the only way systems really work, at least in our world. And we want to put supply chains at fingertips. So let's take a step back. Interesting idea, great mission, big problem in the market, a clear sort of first step into the problem, some perspectives from customers, which allow us to understand what they want. Then you come in and, with this big market, which was the $1 trillion market, you distill it down to a smaller market. We find what customers want and we give them what they want in the form of AI in production. We already put a robot AI, and this is the first time ever that robots were out there doing cool stuff. You guarantee value to the customer. This is a no-brainer and super critical. I've seen so many startups, they just fail to understand that your success comes from the success of the customer. This is a simple truth that every day, if you want to do a startup, you wake up every day in the morning and you tell yourself, my success comes from the success of the customers. If the customers are not really, really happy, I am going to fail. And so you need to guarantee that success, right? Otherwise, don't take their money. It's a very simple thing. And what you really want to do is provide strategic value as well, because that's what allows you to succeed in the long run. So how do we get big market, clear beachhead, our product, our customer satisfaction guarantee, and strategic insights which set us apart from the rest of the competition? That's the kind of stuff that allows you to win. And just to recap, let's take a bit of a step. Interesting vision, interesting skill set, interesting tools, major problem in society, big market, smaller section of clearly identified market with a very major pain, understanding of what that pain means for specific customers and what we can say to address it, mapping that to your core value proposition, which could be built around, for us, for instance, AI in production, guaranteed ROI, and strategic digital transformation. If you can do things like this, you'll win in the startup game. If you can't do things like this, I can guarantee you'll lose. And so, with Dexterity, I think we went from 0 to basically being a multi-billion-dollar business right now, I don't know, multi-billion, single billion, whatever, valuations are also pretty interesting, hype-oriented businesses, things. But we've basically gone from zero to a startup that has an international presence, has lots of employees, raised like, I don't know, 100 million, whatever, some horrendous amounts of millions of dollars. But most importantly, that has technology that is driving value for customers. So my message for all entrepreneurs, focus on the customer. It's a strange truth, which a lot of people ignore to their own detriment. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thanks, thanks for all the great insight. I think you talked about a lot of things which can be, super useful for, the audience, and especially startup founders who are there in the audience. But just a couple of things I would like to, touch upon. You talked a lot around, first principles, which is like identifying the right problem. And it seems like with Dexterity, you did a lot of research in actually, deep diving into the problem space. And then you also talked about, market sizing. And I really loved the slide which you showed where, you identified a market of $1 trillion. Can you share, some advice for our audience over here around like market sizing, how they should approach it? Like, what are some of the things they should bear in mind when conducting market research? So any insights over there?
Yeah, that's a really difficult question. And I think, to be honest, like I like playing to win. And so for me, when we look at things globally, the cost of like doing manual repetitive work is actually, I mean, it's anybody's guess, but my guess is at least, some 10-20% of the world's GDP right now is invested in this. And so for me, it was a no-brainer. Robots are value sort of competitive in high-income countries. The costs are going to go down. It'll be like mainframe computers. In the 1980s, and as scale ramps up, costs go down, things become more and more commoditized. And who would have imagined in the 1980s that one day you'd have a computer that fits in your pocket and it's more powerful than entire rooms full of computers, right? And but those kind of things happen, and I think they will happen. And so the easy answer to that is just look at problems that have crazy global impact, that have economies of scale, where the technology is in the early part of the life cycle. Maybe it's not even cost competitive, right? And if you can work on problems like that, your life is much easier, right? At least you don't have to worry about the market. One of the biggest risks, if you invest for an investor investing in a startup, is the market is going to be too small, right? And so I think you can, for early stage startups, there's the team, of course, is a very critical thing. The market is the second one. And the third one is, can your product or your tech actually make any impact? So I think the market is really important. Now, the question is like, what do you do if you don't have access to, I don't know, $1 trillion market or some crazy market, or you don't have the technology to hit that market? Here's where you want to, there are two things. So one is, if let's say there's a smaller market, let's call it $X. So at what point is X big enough to allow you to become a successful company, right? So this is a more pertinent question, and when you're thinking about a market. And so it comes down to, what do you think a successful company means? Do you think a successful company means you made a product and you sold it off to Google or Cisco or whatever, and you made some millions of dollars, and then you became really rich, and I don't know, bought a fancy house and some fancy shoes and gold-plated teeth and whatever? So if you think like that, you can chase $1 billion market. It's not a problem. You can even chase $100 million market. You still sort of get a startup that will get you somewhere, maybe acquisition hard or whatever. If you want to, if you have a product-oriented mindset, you want to play in a market that gives you the opportunity to attract enough resources to have an impact. You're talking at least a multi-billion-dollar market. And now, why are you talking a multi-billion-dollar market? Well, when we look at markets can be, they can either be consolidated or fragmented, right? And if you have a consolidated market and a strong market leadership, you could have between 20 to 50% market share. Let's say there's even a $1 billion market, if you have 20% market share, you have a $200 million revenue line. That's a pretty solid business, right? I mean, you're at least a multi-billion-dollar company. If you have a consolidated market, even a $1 billion market, and you have 50% market share, it's a pretty good business, right? There's a $500 million revenue line. You're like a $5-10 billion company, one of the top startups in the world. The problem comes, is when you're operating in like single-digit billion-dollar markets and you don't have the ability to consolidate the market. Consolidating the market is really hard, right? You'll need global reach and all sorts of complex things. And usually you'll operate in a fragmented market where market leadership for you means 10% market share. So now if you're at 10% market share and you have a $1 billion market, $100 million business, I mean, it's cute. It's pretty good. It's like, great, but it's not a game changer. And then you're talking 10 billion plus markets, right? Where now you can still have a shot at generating $1 billion revenue. So I think when you're thinking about markets, the simplest one is just go for something really big, right? Which is so obvious that nobody even cares too much about it. The next one is you look at what exit you want or what sort of impact you want. If you're all right with a small impact, you can chase a small market. If you're all right with if you want a bigger impact, but you think you can consolidate the market, you can chase a medium-sized market. If you think you want to have a big impact and you don't think you'll be able to consolidate the market, and trust me, consolidating the market is really hard. Then you need at least a $5-10 billion market, maybe pushing north of that.
Fantastic, sir. Wonderful insights. I know, sir, and I've read that, during the pandemic times, your company was also like there were robbers who were supplying breads to people and groceries and stuff, which is like amazing because the impact of your work is, really getting translated and you're solving like real life problems. But, just one question from my side, and perhaps the last one would be like, you're solving a lot of problems around logistics and warehousing space. But you also want to get into other industries, going forward, like healthcare or retail business and other things.
Absolutely. Like I said, the chart that I drawn was global scale robot deployments, and I don't know if we'll be the ones to do it. I mean, I don't even know if we're going to succeed, and startups still fail, So there's high risk, but I think having a clear focus on the section of the market where you can drive a lot of value is very important. And so for us, logistics, is a very big market. I mean, at the very least, it's like a $50-100 billion market, or on a slightly larger scale, it might even be a multi-$100 billion market. And so I think that's big enough to build an initial business. Having a strategy where you become successful with some sort of core and you expand outwards is allows you to grow in a sustainable manner, right? Like otherwise you need insane amount of money to grow your business. Even Amazon, it started with books, and that too, like long tail edge case books, which are not very easily accessible in bookstores. And then they started branching outwards, and now you can buy almost anything on Amazon, right? You look at Walmart, it started off, retail with like sort of some limited things that were interesting for non-urban sort of consumers in the US, and now Walmart sells globally all sorts of things, right? And so it's important to start with a clear focus, and once you have an established presence, like you expand from there. Don't try to overextend, and even hitting a $5-10 billion market requires a lot of resources, a lot of time, really strong team, and need that learning.
Fantastic. Thanks a lot, sir. We have like more questions coming up, but I'll park them, towards the end once we finish off talk from other panelists. So thank you so much, sir, for all the insights. And with that, I would like to invite Hemant Verma, sir, now, CTO and co-founder of Goodly.
Thanks, everyone. Take care.
Thank you, sir.
I'm not sure I can match up what Samir just said. So apologies. I think he set the bar too high anyways. Um, so for us, Goodly, we do student loan repayment as a employee benefit. It's a much smaller market than so in US, what happens is like education is very expensive, but what happens is companies throws a very different kind of perks at employees. And we thought like how to convert all these non-fungible, some of these benefits convert them back into the real impact one, so that they can pay down debt. Because in US, uh, uh, people who have student loans are unable to buy houses, start families, and everything. So that's where the problem started. But I want to just like go back to a little bit to like I guess my IIIT days and start from there, and come back to this. Uh, I think what's the best you can do in IIIT days is just go learn different kind of things. Like that's the best beauty, and make like I think one of the things at least I really loved while I was there was like I was part of so many groups. Is that like one person was very really interested into networking and all these things with Mithilesh sir, and other person was very interested into programming contests and everything. So I was able to always join them up and figure out like what that helps is basically figure out like where your interest really lies, right? Like that's one thing. Um, Second thing, I think I don't want to like really say this out loud, but like I think since we are in a college framework, but I would say is like don't ever think if you come from, let's say, like I don't know, in even from a quota background or anything like, so because I came to IIIT in a physically handicapped quota, right? But that never stopped me from progressing, because like what used to happen was like there's some stigmatization that hey, he can't do really well because he's not smart or anything. So like one thing you all have to realize is as soon as you come back, it's a like fresh start zero. Everyone in the college was topper in their schools, and now it starts zero again. So that's normally a reality shock for a lot of people, but wasn't not, because I was not the smart person back in my school. I was like, yeah, so what, right? So that really helps. Um, Second thing, what I would do is like early in your career, like before, like I think one path is definitely is you can directly go start a company, right? Like that works. Like, but I think in India, it's a still very status driven society. Like, oh, you have worked in Microsoft, great. Like now you have this stamp of approval that big company has approved you, right? Like, and it will be much easier for you to, let's say, even get funding or anything not like that, right? So that's what I did. I joined Microsoft, but I sucked at it. I sucked. Like I was there 2.5 years, but I sucked every day of it. And I was like, okay, like I was like, maybe I'm just not a good employee, right? But then I went to Amazon. I really loved it. So the change was that like the speed at which Amazon executed was really, really fast. So like don't basically like figure out like what you really like, and over time you can figure out like okay, this is the kind of environment that then like after Amazon I was like okay, if I really like small play fast paced companies, then I should probably go do startup and everything, right? So that's when I moved to US. uh, Third thing I would say is like don't let anyone else set the rules for you. Like that has been true for me at least. Like let's say in Amazon, when I was in Amazon, I was like, hey, I want Seattle transfer. They were like, no, 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 we have this policy. You have to stay 2 years, then get promoted, then we might send you, right? Then I was like, okay, I don't want to bother with this. Like I will set my own rules when I want to go, right? So you go figure out a different job, go there, right? Like don't let other people that. But like I have always been like even in US while I was working at startups, I worked at an enterprise company, Optimizely, and their pace was very different than I worked at Postmates, which was a consumer focused company. So I figured out what I really liked, but at the same time I saw the drawbacks that consumer companies has a lot more volatility versus enterprise companies has much more stable revenues and everything. Figure out the path. Second is it's a great place to meet your potential co-founders, the team members, and that's where the third company I went to was Rippling. That's where I met my co-founder, and I learned a lot basically. And second of all, I think if you are a software engineer, the best, like I think 21st century has been very good to you in the sense that like even if you go back to go work in a startup for 2 3 years, then you can go back to a job, like you always will get a very above average and very good paying job. Like unless your whole goal is how much money I can accumulate, you will be fine, right? Like you will have a very comfortable life throughout your life. So like go use this time to do experiment and figure out like okay, here is what I like and here is what I don't like and everything. And that's what I have to say. My company, like, it has been around for 3.5. It
So
has
we
been a yeah,
lost you for the last 5 seconds. Sorry.
3 years. We have struggled to find product market fit. There are
Having some technical issues over here, maybe like bad network. So we are not able to hear you. Can you hear us?
I'll stop the video.
Okay, no problem.
Yeah. Can you guys hear me better now?
Yes, so this is much better. Thank you.
No worries. Sorry about that. Um, as I was saying, like, for last 3 years, like, my company has been in existence for last 3 years. We have struggled to find product market fit, but overall, still, it has been a great learning experience. And like, I think the good thing with startup is you only need to find success one time. Failure does not matter really. That's it on my side.
That's great, sir. Some really different insights, especially around like how you can leverage IIIT's infrastructure for finding your passion and work with diverse set of people to sharpen your skills. So amazing insights over there, sir. Uh, you mentioned a very interesting thing, sir, around like social pressure, especially in an Indian society, right? And one of the questions we got from one of the registered participants before the session was just around that, where this person was asking, like, what uh, were your family's reactions when you said that you want to give up your job or you don't want to sit in placement and you want to start your own venture? So can you share some insights over there? Like, I think it's more touching upon the emotional question side of things, so would really like to get your thoughts over this, sir.
I want to say, oh, I was very courageous and I took all this risky thing, but I was not. I took a normal placement job at Microsoft and I bought a house in US. When I paid it off, then only I started my company, right? So, like, path might work for some or not others, but like, one thing I realized when I moved to US very early on was, like, the biggest expense is housing expense. As soon as you pay that off, it's like there's no real expense, like, and then you can take as much risk as you want.
That's great, sir. So, for the audience over here, you have to be strategic. You have to be, calculative when you're taking the risk. You should have like enough backing. And as Hemant sir mentioned, like, he solved the basic fundamental problems first before solving the problem of loans with Goodly. So great advice over there, sir. And one last question for you, sir, because your startup is backed by Y Combinator. Like, what was the experience like over there? Like, how are you able to get into the summer school? And, what are the main things, say, for the audience over here who wants to, be part of Y Combinator and, want the startup to be, backed by it? Like, what is your advice for them?
I think that, like, see, a lot of it is luck. Like, I know when I will say this, people will not like the answer. A lot of it is luck, but like, there are certain things you can do that improve your luck. Like, one is like, like, you can, like, when you can go through all the YC lectures, you will literally find all the values they look for in interviews, and if you check most of their boxes, they will likely take you, right? So, like, biggest is like having a co-founder. Second is like you are making so much progress that they feel like if they miss out on you, like sometimes YC just invest into people not because like they think this idea will work, because they want these people to be in their network, because there is next startup idea they will do, or after that they will do, and that will be you. popular basically, right? So like I think if you go through YC lectures on YouTube, can pretty much get the ideas of like what are the values they are looking for.
Fantastic. Okay. Thanks a lot, sir, for all the brilliant insights. And with that, I would like to invite our last panelist, Soumya Bhattacharya, sir, who is the CFO and CDO of SUS Labs. And he is solving a very interesting problem over there at SUS Labs. So, sir, over to you now.
Yeah, hi. Am I audible?
Yes, you're audible.
And am I visible as well? Oh,
Yep, all good.
good to be back here. I think many of you must have heard me in the talk few minutes back. So yeah, so I'm the CFO and Chief of Data, as well as the co-founder of SUSLabs. So SUSLabs is basically a big data analytics company on electricity. So the problem we are solving is we are trying to unlock the wealth of information that an electricity supply carries. So we have a product which is called as Home Assistant. So I'll just write down in the chat for everyone to be clear. So that is the name of the product. So it's an IoT device. It's an IoT product. So it's a real-time electricity activity tracker for your homes. So users get to see the energy consumption of their appliances, get to see appliance level activity, everything in real time, get to diagnose their appliance health, get to manage their services and warranties, and many other things. So this is more or less what the product does. Now, I'll talk about how we started. I mean, what was the motivation behind it? So going back a little further, after IIITA, so I graduated from IIITA in 2010. Post that, I had 3 years of work in a hedge fund, D Shop. I think many of you already know the company. So I was basically a Linux administrator there. Post which I did an MBA. So I did a MBA from IIM Indore for 2 years. After that, I worked for India's largest IT service company, that is TCS. So I was a pre-sales consultant there. I was mostly working for the payments division in North American geography. That was a very brief stint, 1.5 years stint. In between, I also worked in an edtech startup. So I was in the strategic team under the CEO. So that is pretty much the work ex I had before starting. So we are we were a group of three. We are a group of three. So we three of us are school friends. We were together right from childhood till our school, till actually class 10. Post which everyone had different education, different colleges, and different. All three of us are MBAs as well. And then we came back together in 2016. We started up. The idea was one of the guys of the CEO, but it was so we were onto it from 2013, way long back. We were researching about it always. I mean, talking to people. But at that point of time, I was doing my MBA. The other guy, and the third guy was also doing his MBA, and so we were kind of, scavenging the market. So, and post that, I was working for TCS. After my MBA, I was working for TCS for 1.5 years. At that point of time, we thought it was the most opportune moment to start the thing which we thought about. Uh, it's not like I wanted to leave TCS, not like that. It was just 1.5 years. The job was really, I mean, I could have learned more, but the thing was, this startup was like I had to make a choice between continuing with it or going with the startup. Obviously, startup, we have thought about it. We thought about it for a long time, researched about it. So obviously, that was a very easy choice to make, not because I was done with the work, but because this was more lucrative in terms of me. Not lucrative in terms of any financial thing, but lucrative in terms of learning. So once we got into it full time, then we started interacting with many people. with many organizations. We met many discoms. Discoms, basically the distribution companies. We met the chairperson of CEA, CERC. So CEA is the Central Electricity Authority, and CERC is Central Electricity Regulatory Commission. We met the chairperson of them both. Then we went to NRLDC, which is basically the load dispatch center. So we went to the labs and understood the working. I mean, we saw how the national grid works and how the frequencies are maintained. And we came back and met many other organizations, understood the pain points. So we started as a service company in the beginning. We started as a service company, and we were servicing one of the clients. It was a decent revenue model. I mean, we were getting revenue, but we were not really. I mean, the model was not really robust. We were not really mining the data. See, our company is all about data analytics. So data is very critical to us. So until unless we are not really mining the data, it's not really useful. So post that, we again pivoted. So at that point of time, we thought about developing the product, developing a low cost product, so that, because whatever technologies were available in the market, it's an old technology, it's nothing new, but whatever technologies were available in the market, it was not really a affordable technology. So our main aim was in bringing the technology and making it affordable. So it took us time. It took us around 8 to 10 months, and we came up with the product. Not product exactly. We came up with a solution. It's not something which we can go and sell it to the market. It's a kind of a working prototype, you can say, a 3-part solution. So see, startup is all about problem solving, but if the solution should also have a market behind it. I mean, if you don't have a market for it, then I mean, there's no point solving any problem. So at that point of time, we had to make sure that we interact with a lot of people. We get a platform. We get some associations. So at that point of time, we got incubated. Then post incubation, we spoke to many experts, industry experts. We also many product managers out there. How to actually, the major challenge at that point of time, even though we were building on the product, that 3-part solution became 2-part solution, and then it became monolithic block. Even though we were actually making progress on the product, but we always had the challenge of user proposition, because the need wasn't very evident in the market. People were, most of the households, most of the residential don't really realize that there is actually a pain. So we had to create that pain, uh, something like uh, something like what Alexa does, probably. If I take an analogy, so I mean, Google, it's basically a Google search, right? But Alexa has created that need of yours, that yes, okay, it looks cool, or whatever might be the reason then that people are taking it. So we had to create that need out of it. So I mean, we have succeeded in some aspects. We are still trying for that. But yeah, I mean, uh, we have probably hit the ground somewhat, and right now we are totally retail. Earlier, to go retail means to going retail is one of the most challenging thing, because you need money for that. You need a lot of expense for that, and it's not an easy thing to go retail. Uh, so initially we went to all the commercial places, all the real estate developers. So that is an easier channel to access, but it's not. There are pros and cons of each and every channel. So thankfully, right now we are totally retail. Obviously, a lot has gone behind it, but yeah, right now we are totally retail, and that's how we are doing right now.
That's great, sir. Thank you for all the wonderful insights. And I think yours is the only startup which is based out of India completely, and
Yeah.
incubated at IIT Bombay. So that's really
Yes.
interesting. Now, in the interest of time, we have a lot of questions coming up, but I will convert the Q&A session into more like a rapid fire session, if that's okay. So basically, what I'm going to do is I've done some thematic coding of the questions just in the interest of time. So what I'll do is I'll basically take up a question and then give like each panel member 1 minute to just talk about it. So the most important and the pressing questions that we are seeing in the audience today. Okay. um, and thank you all the panelists for answering questions on the chat as well. Some brilliant insight. I was just telling to my technical group to save all the chats because there are some fantastic insights coming up. Okay, so the very first question is around fundraising and VCs. So maybe like just in 1 minute, if you guys can talk about like for the audience over here, what are the things that they need to keep in mind when approaching VCs, and when they should really go for their funding rounds, basically. So any advice and pro tips on that? We'll start off with in the same order with Shilpi ma'am.
So I've done mostly angels and not VCs. So again, I'll be open to hearing insights on that. But my key insight when you're trying to do an angel round is make sure you have a product which has some traction. Make sure you have a team which can succeed to take it to the next level. Primarily, like if you are just build a prototype, don't waste your time. Don't try to get to an angel right away unless you have a track record of whatever proven previous product or previous company. So yeah, that'll be my quick answer.
Thanks, ma'am. Samir sir.
Just for some background, I mean, I've raised, on the order of like single-digit millions. I've raised on the order of double-digit millions. I've raised on the order of triple-digit millions, hundreds. Sorry, these are yeah. So I think if you're raising, I don't know, between $1 and $10 million, very different game. You can raise this type of money. Three things that matter. There's the total addressable market, or TAM, then there's the team, and then there's the tech. So if you're raising between say $0 to $10 million, it's almost purely team, TAM, tech, right? And so you need to have a very crystal clear view. What is the market? What is the team? What is the problem? How are you going to solve that problem, right? And so if you're raising between 10 to $100 million, actually, there's another band. So there's 0 to 10, then 10 to 50 is another band. 10 to 50, you need to have some traction, right? Like customers. So team, TAM, tech, customer ramp, started to generate some revenue. There's some cash flow. 50 million to 100 million, big numbers, right? Like, so at that point of time, you need to have an established market presence, some sort of leadership, a clearly defined product, maybe a media presence. I mean, people should know about what you're doing. And you need to have a crystal clear view on how you're going to return money back to your investors. So at the end of the day, what I would say is it's important to remember investors are like banks. So when you go to bank and you take a loan, you pay around 4 or 5% interest, right? Investors need to generate 20 to 30% interest. If they don't generate 20 to 30% interest, they fail and they get very upset, and other people get very upset with them. And so just the best way to understand how to fundraise at larger numbers, like say $50 million plus, is to understand that investors their careers are also at stake if they're not delivering that type of interest back. And if you have a good plan that in a relatively de-risked manner can communicate to the investors that you will be able to generate 20-30% interest aggregate for them over the next 5 to 10 years, they'll probably want to give you money. That brings you to the super high numbers, which is $100 million plus. It's pretty tough. I mean, honestly, like I would say it's pretty tough. So you have team, TAM, tech, then you add your customers, you add your ramp, then you add your business plan with a clear pathway to returning money. That still doesn't get you to 100 million plus. 100 million plus, it's, I would say, almost a bit of an emotional game where it's, I think logic kind of goes out the window and it becomes more about, can you communicate that you are going to be somebody who's going to change the world, right? Like, if you can't communicate you're going to be somebody who changes the world, like people may not take a bet on the order of like putting $100 million into your business. But if you can, people, and it's a pretty emotional and tricky thing. I'm not sure I can offer too much advice other than the extremely specific things that we've done, and I've already spoken about a bunch of those. At some point in time, you head into raising the billions of dollars. Not quite there yet, but we'll find out. Maybe a few years later, we'll talk about that.
Fantastic. Thanks a lot, sir. Hemant, sir, your thoughts?
So for us, I think getting into YC kind of opened that 2 million checkbook basically very easily. Like once you get the YC stamp, I guess. Other than that, like to be completely honest, that is the only money we have raised right now. So that's the only experience we have. So get into YC and you can raise 2 to 5 million easily.
Fantastic. Thanks, sir. And Soumya, sir.
I'll just add one more. YC sounds great, but I also really don't like the idea of giving away 8% of your company for 150 grand or something like that. You do? Is that the deal? 7%.
Yeah.
Oh, it's like, I don't know. Do you really want to do it?
It's
Interesting.
Painful.
much better. It's like we didn't had anything, to be completely honest, sir, at that point.
Yeah. No, I mean, if you need to do it, you can do it. You should.
Yeah.
There are many companies. YC is fantastic. I'm just being a little bit snarky.
So
Cool.
for us, for us, we have mostly done angels till now. Almost 400K we have raised. In Indian terms, it will be almost around 2.5 crores. So, I mean, for angels, the most important thing is your team and your product. I mean, market, and again, I'm talking purely from the point of view of Indian investor. Market is definitely one of the things they look at, but not a priority thing when going for the very early stage funding. So for early stage funding, team and product are very important. But when you move ahead, at that point of time, market comes into effect, because at that point of time, investors are actually putting real money in the sense a lot of money, and they would definitely want an exit. So if you don't really have a good market size, I mean, and again, good market size is not about what market size you are proposing, but what market size is actually addressable. You know, what market size is actually serviceable. So that becomes very important. But we haven't reached that stage yet. But still, this is what is the thing.
Perfect. Second theme, really quickly. Maybe one-liners from each of you. Second theme is team building. So, secret of hiring and secret of firing. We'll start with Shilpi, ma'am.
Okay. Secret of hiring: hire the people that you worked before. And if you manage to find somebody that you hired outside of your network, and you think that person is a brilliant person, get referrals. Like, get that person. Half of my team sits in Ecuador, like think Latin America, and managed to get one person there. He recommended 3 more, and all great people. So referrals and people you worked with before. Secret of firing: it's hard. It's hard to fire, especially at a very early stage. But be data driven. Talk about what they were expected to do. Make sure surprise. Make sure that you have told them a few times that here's the thing that's expected out of you. Here's what you're doing. Let's give it some more time. Like, don't make it a sudden decision that tomorrow you are not going to be working with the company. So make it progressive. Let the person have a chance to bounce back. Every person wants to do the right thing, and give them a chance.
That's great. So follow like a very Amazonian model, put them in dev plans first, and so on and so forth.
Sort of. Like, not like that structured, but more informal. Like, just don't fire on the spot. Like, doesn't help anyone.
That's cool, ma'am. Thank you. Samir, sir.
I think Shilpi's broadly advice is really good. Whether Shilpi, it's been a long time. Good to see you. I think just to play devil's advocate, I think hiring. I strongly believe in hiring people. It really, then the question of hiring doesn't really come up. The fighting, I'm absolutely horrible at fighting people. It's probably my greatest weakness in life. Is I actually get deeply connected with people, and I mean I love folks I work with, and it's a very emotional thing. And so if people not working out, I also really try to make it work like till the very end. Which usually leads you to a situation where you're like you can take a horse to the water, but you can't make it drink. And so I think ordinarily Shilpi's of advice is probably the correct one, but I would say sometimes you just do need to fire people on the spot. And the thing is, like, if you those death plans, people check out, and it actually does more damage, and it takes way more time than it should. And so sometimes it's actually for the good of the person that you fire them on the spot, rather than make them go through this painful process of like not being able to make it, or are you going to make it? Are you not going to make it? Uncertainty is horrible, and I would say even if there's like 10% uncertainty that this candidate is going to make it, sooner or later this candidate is not going to make it, right? Or what will happen is they'll make it up to a point and they'll find a glass ceiling above their head. They'll become political. They'll become very adversarial and antagonistic, and eventually you'll have to fire them anyway. And so it's a very subjective thing, but I do think there is times where firing somebody on the spot is in their best interest, not necessarily in your own.
Yep.
So if it's in their best interest to fire them on the spot, even if they hate you for the rest of your life and they call you mean, whatever. I mean, I've heard all of this, even people used to hate Gandhi and Mother Teresa and all that. And so it's all right. You have to live with it. Half the people are going to be loving you. 1/3 will be ambivalent, and there'll be like 10-20% who will just hate your guts no matter who you are. So, do it for their own good.
Fantastic. Great insights. Completely agree with you, sir. I think sometimes, firing is just good for the employee, rather than wasting, sort of time, because there are better things that they can do outside, which is like more, which is a better fit of their skill set. Hemant, sir, quickly on hiring and firing.
I think this is great advice. I have nothing to add.
Okay, sir. Thank you. And Samya, sir.
Yeah, hiring, I mean, referrals are the best, when you are a very small company, you definitely rely on referral. You don't really go out in the market and scout for, I mean, yeah, you can do that, but definitely referral is one of the most important thing when you're a very small company. And firing is, of course, I mean, the most toughest thing. I feel, incidentally, in our journey, we had to fire only one person in the company. And again, it wasn't a very swift firing. We made them, I mean, we made that person work on something, and it was a very slow and gradual thing. And we also helped that person look for the next job and those all things. So again, I mean, yeah, we haven't had that experience of firing continuously, but yeah, one very interesting aspect which we saw that post the pandemic thing, uh, there has been a very high attrition rate for those who joined post pandemic. Uh, we see a pattern. We still don't know what might be the reason. We just take guesses, but yeah, there has been quite a high number of attrition. It's not firing exactly, but it's attrition.
Great. Thank you, sir. And then, I had a couple of things, but, I'll just finish off with one very last theme. I think this is important. I've seen a lot of questions coming in on the chat pertaining to product market fit and, ideas, etc. But the theme is really how you converge curiosity to implementation. A lot of people have a lot of ideas, a lot of things going on in their mind. They're also confused about like which business they should get into. But what's your, single advice on how you can convert your curiosity into an implementation and an actual business idea? Shilpi ma'am.
Let me think. So curiosity is great, but at the end of the day, you should be solving a problem. You the way I went about it is like I went very broad. Like when I went into the food sector, I actually knew nothing about it. Like in fact, I spent like a fair time just understanding the space. Like do I understand what the hell, how do these food businesses operate? Like how's the delivery system? How's the operations? And my key thinking is there were things that I thought was not right. I thought that hey, there is a certain kind of food that's not available. Maybe I should create that. Or eventually, I figured out the hiring problem. The key part I would say is like every time you think that here is a space that I want to create a product for, be also open to pivot. Like you think that you have that particular idea that's going to make the $1 billion business. it may not be true, and it's okay to pivot. And another thing that I wanted to say is we've talked a lot about like VCs and we talked about angels. Remember, like products can be of varied range. Like not every product has to be VC level. There are products which are angel level, solving a problem for a few million people, and it's a decent product for them, and you can exit from that as well. So key things I will say is like keep your curiosity on, keep hunting where you are really solving a problem for the customer. You may think, and I think Samir mentioned at some point in the chat, is like you should be validating your product market fit pretty much every now and then. Like, are you still solving a problem for them? If you're not, time to pivot, change around, change things, and remember, like you don't have to always be a $1 billion business. You can create a problem, solve it, and have a great exit even on a smaller scale. So every entrepreneur has a journey.
Excellent insights, ma'am. Pivot, move on, experiment, validate your hypotheses. Great learnings.
Yeah.
Samir, sir.
I don't know. This is like life advice is just totally random. I think just do something you're really excited about, and I think do it with people that you really care to spend a lot of time with, and solve problems. I think if you just need to be pretty invested in whatever you're doing. If you're really invested in what you're doing, like Shilpi was saying, if the truck breaks down, you get out and like fix that truck. And if you need to make burritos or I don't know, whatever, khichdi, go out and make burritos and khichdi. So just be ready to do the stuff that other people on the team don't want to do, because there'll always be random stuff. And I think if you are the one who can, that random stuff kind of piles up and it becomes a mountain of garbage and can destroy many startups. And so just clean it out all the time. And so I think you'll only do that if you really care. If you don't really care, then you shouldn't do it.
Fantastic. Find a purpose, passion, be humble. So, be ready to, do any job which can get you things done.
I mean, you can
Nice to know.
arrogantly also do the job. Sometimes I do it very arrogantly. I wouldn't say humility is my greatest, but just do it, right? Like, actions speak louder than attitudes and words.
Yes, bring the red in you. So, fantastic. Thanks, sir. Hemant, sir.
I think going to early stage startup and the problems they have is a like good source where you can find potential startup ideas, like the things you hate to do there. Like obviously beside politics, there are other things, even technical things you hate to do that can be automated. Those are good source of problems that you can. Human nature you
That's
can't
great.
change, so just stay away from that.
Fantastic. And last but not least, Soumya, sir.
Yeah.
Closing thoughts.
Yeah, I think most of the points have already been covered. I think, yes, it has to solve a problem. Curiosity should be converted to a problem, should be converted to a solution. I mean, problem solving. And after problem solving, you need to have a market for it. I mean, that's where the validation comes into place. You need to have a market. Yes, if these two are done, probably you get a product market fit. Suppose that is another issue which you have to solve. That is that is how to scale, but that comes later. First, you need to go for product market fit, and of course, you need to be quite invested in whatever you do. It takes a lot of effort. It's I mean, to convert your curiosity to an actual business model. So yeah, that's all.
Fantastic. Thanks a lot, sir, and thanks to all our panel members for fantastic insights. Thanks to the audience. Thanks to our volunteers, Mayank and Medha, for the logistics and for the technical help. And I hope that this session was super useful for a lot of you and a lot of aspiring entrepreneurs who are there. And one last thing, I think Shilpi ma'am, Samir sir, Hemant sir, Soumya sir, a lot of people would want to connect with you. You have achieved so much, in your entrepreneurial journey. So, if I think it should be okay if people reach out to you on LinkedIn or follow your Twitter handle. And, if there anything else, if you are a regular on a particular blog, please do share that as well, so that, people can always, learn from your experience. But yeah, with that, thank you, all four of you and our audience.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you.
Please do join the other session. There are still some fantastic alumni stories left. So yeah, and then we'll end at 12.
And just a round of
Thank you,
applause for the organizers. By the way. Amazing job. Very well done.
Thank you.
For service.
Thank you.
I second that. Good job in doing it.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So, see you.
Thank you. Bye.